Joseph took a cigarette break from helping Mia through her labor. This has brought up some unresolved trauma from Kathleen passing away, or giving birth to Victoria and Isabel. Mia took a stroll around their land in hopes to make her labor progress quicker. She was in so much pain, and didn't know how she was going to push this child out of her. She wasn't strong enough. Mia tried to focus on her breathing instead of the powerful contractions ripping through her body. Her sister had gone through labor with grace, never complaining. For the first time, she felt envious of her sister and the strength she had. She wished her labor would move along faster. She had been in active labor for over 12 hours and was exhausted. After 14 hours of painful contractions, she felt the urge to push. Joseph was with her every step of the way. He whispered encouraging sentiments in her ear and repeated countless times how much he loved her. Mia felt so grateful for Joseph. She was positive that she could not go through this without him. He held her steady as she sat upright to get in a better position to push their child into the world. Her pain was unbearable, but soon they would have their child. Mia's intuition was correct. Joseph had his heir. The 1900s heir is named Clyde Bennett. The couple stared in awe at their perfect little boy. They had a son. Joseph felt so much pride to finally be a father to his heir. Mia promised to bear him a son, and she stayed true to her word. When Joseph held Clyde in his arms for the first time, his entire future flashed in his mind. His son would be his successor, and he would make him so proud. This child would be everything he wanted him to be. Mia had never felt much of a maternal instinct prior to giving birth. That all changed when she looked at Clyde's little face. This child had her entire heart, and she would stop at nothing to ensure he had the perfect life, no matter who she had to hurt or what she had to do. For the first time in his life, Joseph was a doting father. He spent every free moment with his son, his heir. This child had so much potential, and he couldn't wait to mold him in his image. He often whispered the life he had in store for Clay. His son would smile brightly at him, and that warmed Joseph's heart more than his girls ever could. His son was all that mattered now. Breastfeeding was a beautiful and easy journey for mother and child. Her bond with Clyde was unmatched. A few weeks after Clyde was born, the eldest twins had a birthday to celebrate. They were aging into children today. Mia had waited for this day for a long time. They would be self-sufficient enough to be able to move into the separate living quarters. She baked an elaborate cake for them, but really, the cake was for her own celebration to be done with them. Joseph's family dynamic with Esmeralda and Francis changed from close to strict. He had an agenda now to find them wealthy husbands when they were of age. Since Esmeralda was 2 minutes older than her sister, she blows out her candles first. Esmeralda's childhood trait is good. Her childhood aspiration is to be a creative genius. This means she wants to build her creative and mental skills the most. Joseph places a new set of candles for Francis to blow out. Francis was very excited to get older. Francis does not get a new trait and instead keeps the hates the outdoors trait from toddlerhood. Her aspiration is to be an artistic prodigy. Esmeralda and Francis became even closer after they aged into children. They were ostracized by the rest of their family and needed each other. Soon after their birthdays, Joseph sat the girls down to discuss the changes in the home. He explained that his son would need a room of his own, so they would move into their auntie's old living space. They were unhappy with this arrangement and wished their mummy was there to advocate for them. They felt unwanted and discarded. Mia focused every ounce of her time and energy on her perfect son. He was such a calm baby and was a joy to be around. She was happy. Joseph went back to work on the crops in the fields. He had taken a few weeks off to be with his wife and son, but he had to return to work if he wanted the revenue from the upcoming harvest season. For the first time in his life, he preferred to be inside and amongst his family, among his wife and son. The older twins could now take care of the younger ones, so he was mostly free from taking care of them. Esmeralda and Francis had ambitions to go to school. Their father wouldn't allow it, so instead, they taught themselves. Both girls were highly intelligent and eager to learn new things despite their father's objections. They were instead encouraged to spend time with their younger sisters. They loved their sisters, but they wanted more for their lives than to be surrogate mothers to them. They gave them the love that they deserved, the love that the older twins did not receive after their mother passed away. They were just little girls and needed direction and affection. The girls loved their baby brother. They rarely were able to see him because Mia would not allow it. She wanted her son all to herself. The girls would sneak into their father's bedroom and watch their brother. He was smelly, but he was the cutest little guy they knew. Mia had been keeping a secret from everyone, including her husband. She had been bleeding since giving birth, and it continued to get worse as the weeks passed. She often fainted from blood loss. It was the 1890s, so Mia was unable to go to the doctor. Her condition continued to rapidly decline until she had lost too much blood to survive. She had suffered silently for weeks and finally succumbed to her injuries. Mia had gone to the other side to suffer eternally for the sins she committed. A fire broke loose at the same time as Mia's demise. Joseph would think back to this moment as Kathleen's revenge for the atrocities she suffered while living. After Joseph hadn't seen his wife in several hours, he went looking for her. He found her limp, lifeless body at the edge of their land. His heart sank and broke when he realized that Mia wasn't coming back to him. She was gone forever. Esmeralda and Francis mourned the loss of their auntie even though she was cruel to them. She was their family. They offered their father comfort and sympathy for his unbearable loss. He wanted nothing of the sort. He did not want to go on if the love of his life wasn't with him. No one could ever Esmeralda and Francis became the glue that held the family together in the months following Mia's passing. They were still young, but had enough common sense to know that if the animals weren't cared for, and the crops weren't tended to, they would lose their home. They worked tirelessly together day in and day out. Joseph had locked himself in his room and would only come out when dinner was served. He did not speak to the girls, nor did he care about the progress of the crops. He had given up. Esmeralda felt more hopeless of their situation than ever. She did not know how to help her father. They were not yet grown, and this was not reasonable responsibility to put on young girls. She had half a mind to write to her grandmother. She was a callous woman, but at least they would have another adult there to take care of them. The outdoor chores were especially hard on Frances. She did not like to be outdoors, and it made her feel uncomfortable and uneasy. She would rather be indoors with her siblings, but Esmeralda couldn't do all the outdoor chores on her own. Her one saving grace to tending to the animals was her bond with their car. She had lovingly named her Grace. Her father had always warned her not to name the animals, but she couldn't help it. Grace was her friend. The cow was very patient with her when she had to collect her milk. It almost felt like Grace had been sent by her mother to watch over her. Joseph had become a hermit, always enclosed in his bedchamber. He no longer felt like a man. He wept for his beloved Mia every moment he was away. The only thing that got him out of bed was his son. It wasn't because of his affection for him, no. It was because of Mia's. She loved their son more than anything and did not want to dishonor her by neglecting Clyde. He was depressed and lost without her. Esmeralda and Francis found little ways to find happiness despite their solemn situation. Francis began to make friendship bracelets for each of the members in her family. Esmeralda found that positive self-talk in the mirror made her feel better. Happier times were coming for them. Several months after Mia's passing, Joseph mustered up what little enthusiasm he had left in him to bake the younger twins' birthday cake. He thought about just letting the day pass, but that was not fair to them. None of this was their fault. Joseph added the candles to the cake and retrieved the girls from their room. Being the eldest of the two, Victoria blew out her candles first. Victoria's toddler trait is independent. The baby of the girls, Isabel, blew out her candles last. She was so excited to be by her daddy. Isabel's toddler trait is also independent. This set of twins are basically the same child. A few weeks following the twins aging up into toddlers, it was time for Clyde to age up from a newborn and into an infant. Joseph wished his wife was there to celebrate this milestone. Clyde's infant trait is calm. After a few months, Joseph began to leave his room for more than dinner time. It was mostly to check up on the girls' progress with the animals and the fields. They would always do it wrong, so he would have to correct the lazy job they did. He would visit his wife's grave often. Sometimes he would spend the evening crying over her headstone. Other days, he would talk to her and beg her to talk back to him. She never did. She was really gone. He aged into an adult with his wife by his side, or at least her body was 6 feet under. There were times when Joseph's grief became too much that it put him in almost a catatonic state. Sometimes while he was taking care of Clyde. It was because of this that he decided to reach out to Greta for help. Greta came to the Bennett farm as soon as she received Joseph's letter. She did not care for the grotesque smells on the farm, however. It was perfect timing to start molding Esmeralda and Francis into the perfect wives, just as she had done her own daughters. Some of the girls were very excited to see their grandmother. They were only graced with her presence during holidays or special occasions, so this was a treat for them. She had picked her favorites. Other daughters were unhappy with the arrival. Greta was not warm to the girls, and this caused some of the family to act up. Isabel in particular was frightened by her grandmother, so she avoided her at all costs. Joseph found ways around his grief, none of which were healthy forms of coping. He started to drink until he didn't hurt anymore, so that meant he was drinking the entire day and consuming absurd quantities of alcohol. Anything to stop the yearning for Mia's touch, her smile, or the way their bodies fit together perfectly. He also began chain smoking his cigarettes. He had lost count of how many he smoked in a day. 20, 30, 40, who could say? The nicotine brought him some relief, but nothing like the liquor as it absorbed into his bloodstream. His only will to keep going on without Mia was their son. He assisted with tummy time so he would be strong and carry on the farm someday. His heir had to be a strong man for his future family, and like Joseph was to his own. The younger twins hated to be stuck in the house all day. They had a mischievous streak between them, so they would put ways to go explore out on the farm. The twins would split up once outside because they had differing areas of interest. Victoria had a curiosity with the animals, particularly the llama. She would bug the poor guy into oblivion, but she didn't care. He was fluffy and made funny noises, and it amused her for hours. Isabel preferred to splash and play in the pond on their land. The water felt nice on her cheeks, and she enjoyed the look of dismay on her grandmother's face when she returned inside. On particularly hard days for Joseph, when he was in a drunken state from the night before, he would sit on the ground near the area his wife took her last breath. It made him feel closer to her, and it comforted him. Frances mourned as well, but not her nasty auntie. She mourned her mother and wished she could be reunited with her. It was the only time she felt love from a parent. Esmeralda cleaned the animals one last time as winter began to sweep hen for Don Bagley. Winter illness was coming, but which soul would it take from the Bennett household? Winter illness has come for one of the members of the Bennett household. Their fate is up to the wheel. The recipient of the fatal winter illness is poor Frances. She has already been through so much in her young life. Because it is the 1890s, she is unable to receive any life-saving measures, sadly. Poor Frances will soon expire, but gets to spend her final days with her family. Frances began to feel incredibly ill. She had heard scary stories about the dreaded winter illness, but her family had never been infected. She felt it in her bones that her time was limited and she was utterly terrified. She thought of all of the things she would never get to do. She would never marry or bear children. She would never watch her siblings grow up nor be able to protect them from their father. All she could think to do was love her siblings while she could. She had taken care of the younger twins since they were infants, and she adored them so very much. Joseph sensed something was wrong with Frances, so he drank his ways away. It worked, but only for a fleeting moment. His beautiful daughter was living on borrowed time, and this home, or he, was cursed to lose all of his loved ones. Esmeralda was taking the news of her twins suffering from winter illness the hardest. She couldn't live without the girl she shared a womb with and spent every second of her life with. Esmeralda could not allow her twin sister to see her upset. She had to be strong for her. Even if this was going to be the hardest thing she ever went through, she wanted her twin to feel at peace and happy during her last few days. She held her sister close and told her repeatedly just how much she loved her. She told her everything she had held inside for so long. There would be no secrets between each other when Frances passed on. Frances clung on to life so she could experience one last Winterfest with her family. It was always her favorite time of year, a time where their family always came together even if they didn't like each other. She decorated the Winterfest tree. She wanted every ornament to look perfect, so that her family had something beautiful to look at when she passed on. Her father kept a watchful eye on her. Esmeralda and Frances exchanged gifts with each other before the rest of the family came down to celebrate. They needed one last moment to be together as twins, as best friends. Their gifts to each other were heartfelt like they always were. Esmeralda gifted her twin a new gown. Frances asked to be buried in it. They cried together as Frances gifted her sister a present. She gave her the friendship bracelet she had worked on years ago. Joseph was an emotional wreck, but he knew he had to be strong for his daughter. He did what he hadn't done for Frances the majority of her life. He was present and warm to her. She deserved so much more than he had provided her, and he felt so much guilt. Frances entertained the younger twins, but she couldn't give them much. She felt so weak and just wanted to lay down, but she refused to allow the illness to win during Winterfest. Victoria and Isabel were blissfully unaware of their sister's condition nor knew that she would soon cease to exist. They enjoyed the festivities. Esmeralda let a few tears fall down her cheeks as she sat with her twin. This was all too overwhelming, and she was devastated that her dear Frances would soon be with their mummy. After hours of enjoying each other's company around the fire and Winterfest tree, Frances asked for her daddy to hold her. Joseph initially asked why, but he fell silent when he looked in his daughter's eyes. It was time. He held her close, feeling his precious Frances drift out of consciousness. Soon she went limp in his arms, and he knew she had gone to the other side. Finally at peace, Joseph clung to his daughter's body, feeling so guilty because of the many years he neglected to show her love and affection. The only comfort was knowing that Kathleen would take care of her now. The younger twins were frightened at the sight of their sister laying on the ground, unmoving. Their daddy told them that she had gone to be with Mummy. They cried for a long time, said they would never see Frances again. Esmeralda fled to the one place she could be alone. She didn't have it in her to comfort her sisters nor her father. Frances was gone. The only person in the world that understood her, loved her unconditionally. Devastated, didn't